We'll try this one. Good morning, everyone. Some years ago, a homeowner was fed up and tired of this unsightly boulder that was in his yard. Hadn't done anything with it for years. He couldn't do anything with it. It was just too expensive. So he got the idea that he would change or transform its appearance. So he went after it with his hammer and chisel and began to whittle this thing into something beautiful, a piece of yard art. After about 9 months of chipping away at this stone, he revealed a very beautiful stone elephant. His neighbor was quite impressed with it and was very complimentary and said, how were you able to perform such a beautiful act on that unsightly boulder? For this elephant is rather magnificent. The homeowner replied, it was simple. I just chipped away everything in the boulder that didn't look like an elephant. I chipped away everything in the boulder that didn't belong to an elephant. I chipped away everything in the boulder that did not have the appearance of an elephant. My dear friends, I'm going to stop right there in the story. I'll be coming back to it. Last week, we recall how Jesus sent the apostles out to serve. I call that the ministry of serving. Today, we see the apostles returning and sharing their stories with Jesus, but Jesus doing something quite beautiful with them. After he hears all of the stories and the tales, he gives them the ministry of resting. And that's what I want to talk about today, because far too often, we who are the disciples, we who are active in that ministry of serving, oftentimes forget that ministry of resting. And that resting with the Lord is very important for us. You know, it's when the Lord allows us to examine ourselves after we've returned, to take a good look of what we have carried with us inside, what might need to be kept, what might need to be chipped away. It's a good time for us to ask the Lord to assess us and to be busy about chipping away anything that might not be love or compassion. Certainly is a good time for us to ask the Lord to chip away anything in us that's not goodness and patience and understanding. It's a good time for us to ask the Lord to chip away anything that's not mercy and forgiveness. Oh, and while you're at it, Lord, it's also a good time if you discover anything really unsightly in us, like vengeance and prejudice and hatefulness, get rid of that for sure. Yeah, this time of ministry of rest with the Lord is very key for that preparation that we need before we're sent out again to exercise the ministry of service. Rest is very important for us, too, for our very physical being. You know, some of us, gardening is what we do to clear our heads. Maybe a vacation is in order, and it's what we do to restore that physical rest that we need, that energy. Some people take walks in the park. Some sit in a coffee shop. Whatever it might be, we do it so that we can restore and renew our physical strength, and it's extremely important. But we shouldn't stop there. We go forward to make sure this period of rest includes a restoring and renewing of our very spirit. And we can most certainly do that by opening up the Scriptures. We can do that by praying a morning devotion. We can do that by simply being quiet and recognizing the presence of God. What we're doing here today at Mass is an act of ministry of rest. This is where we encounter God's peace And that peace renews and restores us and readies us. Thank God for that. But we are a people, though, who must keep this ministry of service and this ministry of rest in balance. If we do too much of one and neglect the other, then our effectiveness as disciples, as being a people who carry the mission of Jesus out into our community, is impeded. We need to have a healthy balance. We need to recognize that if we just do all of the service that's before us and never rest, we run the risk of burning out. We run the risk of compromising or severing that relationship that we have with God, which is the foundation of our very being. We run the risk of then not being able to serve the people before us in the name of the one who sends us, Jesus Christ. But on the other hand, if we find ourselves just being a people who rest and never serve, we run the risk of a blind eye that doesn't see the help of the people before us. We run the risk of turning a deaf ear to those who cry out for help. We run the risk of being indifferent to the sufferings and hurts of our world around us, and nothing gets done for them. There's no response then of love. Yeah, having a healthy balance is key. And whenever we engage in our spiritual exercises, this rest with the Lord, it is a good time for us to remember then that as we're sent to be that minister of service, we do so as an active participant in God's will for humanity, an active participant in helping Him to build up the kingdom of heaven here on earth. That ministry of rest helps us to remember that the agenda that we live in this ministry of service is of God and not us. And that ministry of rest that we have helps us to remember that as we go to serve, we are driven not by task, but by love. Yeah, this ministry of rest is pretty helpful to get our focus on Christ, to listen to Him, to be taught by Jesus, and to grow strong that intimate and real relationship with our blessed Lord. This is what helps to keep us balanced. In our gospel today, and in the first reading, and of course in our responsorial psalm, there's a common theme of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. These are His virtues, His attributes, His ways that we need to emulate as we are sent out to exercise our ministry of service. We are to be those people like the Good Shepherd who gather and not scatter, a people who guide and not confuse, a people who protect and not hurt or harm, a people who care for the needs of others and are most certainly not indifferent. When we do that, we're making the presence of the Good Shepherd known to the sheep who cry out for help and hope in their lives. You know, we have a tall order to fill with our responsibilities as disciples. And St. Teresa of Avila, I think, said it best, that as we're sent to exercise this ministry of service, after we've been prepared with our ministry of rest, we must remember that yours are the eyes with which Jesus looks compassion on the world. This ministry of rest helps our eyes to be wide open. St. Teresa goes on to say, yours are the feet with which Jesus uses to go about doing good in the world. This ministry of rest helps to ensure that our feet are strong and will take us to all corners where the Lord leads us. St. Teresa goes on to say, yours are the hands with which Jesus blesses the world. And when we retreat to our ministry of rest, we are ensuring that our hands are wide open, inclusive, and welcoming. You know, my dear friends, I have no doubt that when the Lord looks out onto the landscape of humanity, He's going to see and find some unsightly boulders in people's yards. He might even see some rather magnificent yard art. But I got to tell you, what He's going to find most pleasing is you and me. People who embrace the opportunity to live the ministry of service and the ministry of rest, because the Lord sees the change and the transformation that is taking place in us, and how through these ministries we are becoming more like, more honed into the image and likeness of His Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Have a good day today in the Lord, and let's get plenty of rest.